Good morning, and welcome to Another Chance Church. It's March 29th, and I'm just going to jump right into it. This morning and last week also, were very much more informative teaching style videos rather than the more worshipful type church services, and I'm not opposed to those kind of services. I guess there's a couple reasons. One, I feel like there's a little groundwork needs to be laid. We are a brand new church, and we're here, with the express purpose of reaching the unchurched, and so letting people know what we're about just kind of makes sense. Last week it seemed like we're all in this quarantine situation, and we're all just kind of, what do we do? What do we do? So, that's where that message came from. But this one, whether we were in this situation or not, this message today, I think, really needs to be heard and understood by those who are outside the church, who might have a desire to come in, but have run into different obstacles or roadblocks in the way that they see us. So definitely for those of you not in churches who are looking, please listen and understand what I'm trying to say here. And for those of you who are in churches and listening to this, apply this to yourself. See if any of this relates to you, and if maybe there's some adjustment that needs to be made. I mean, we get complacent, we get tired and just busy with life, and things creep in, things that we don't even notice a lot of times. So just whatever your position is right now, please take this at face value, apply it, and just see if there is, something there that maybe you need to pay attention to. Without further ado, and I'm going to stop stumbling all over myself here maybe. I want to go ahead and get started, and I want to start with prayer, mostly for me and for what I have to say. So just bear with me for a moment if you would. Father, I thank you for this opportunity to reach out to people. I thank you for the technology that we have so that in this time of quarantine we can still come together as the church, even though we're not physically together. And I just ask you to guide me. Help me to say only what you want me to say and no more, because it's not about my message, it's about yours. And help everyone watching to receive it in the way that they need to, and to hear your voice through this. And I thank you. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay. Today what we're talking about is myths and misconceptions about a Christian life. I've been talking pretty much ever since I started pursuing my credentials with the Church of God. I've been talking about just about the church culture, what is expected of us from those who are not among us. Really, what the unchurched reasons that the unchurched don't come in, and why non-believers are uncomfortable in a church setting. And so I've kind of gone through and asked some people to help me to compile a list, and I've compiled a list of some. It's not an exhaustive list. I'm sure there's things that are not on here that may come up, and if that's the case, reach out to me and let's discuss them. But I've compiled a list of some of the major things that I've seen and that I've been told that people that people bring up as what they believe about a Christian that they don't that aren't necessarily true. So let's just jump into number one. Number one, and I think one of the biggest ones that, at least it's big to me. Number one is you don't have to get cleaned up to take a bath. You don't have to fix yourself before you come to Jesus or before you come to church. Now, there's a lot of people who feel like that they can't go to church because they've done all this stuff and their life is, in disarray. And maybe they feel like they can't come to church because the people in the church are going to look at them and judge them because of where their life's at. But if we go to Matthew chapter 9, verses 10 through 12, and I read out of the New Living Translation. It's not the King James, so some of y'all probably just turn me off. But it's just written in more modern English and easier to digest for me. And so that's where I do my research from. But in Matthew 9, verses 10 through 12, it says, "Later, Matthew invited Jesus and his disciples to his home as dinner guests, along with many tax collectors and other disreputable sinners. But when the Pharisees saw this, they asked his disciples, 'Why does your teacher eat with such scum?' When Jesus heard this, he said, 'Healthy people don't need a doctor. Sick people do.'" Now, he does go on in the next few verses to even say to them, "I didn't come for those who think they're righteous. I came for those who know they need a savior." That's me paraphrasing, but he does say that. He's like, and basically he's calling them out. He's like, "You guys think that you're one thing, but you're really not. You're deluded." That's just from the book of Jared. But the point he's making here is Jesus came to this earth. God in flesh came to the earth. And who did he go and seek out and hang out with and call as his disciples? Because this is Matthew that he called as one of the 12. And that's who he's hanging out with, these sinners, these not like the religious people sinners. The people that are talking about Jesus being with them and eating with them, they wouldn't be caught dead with these guys because it was just taboo. These guys are doing their own thing and they're out there and we're just going to leave them alone and stay away from them. Well, how are you going to reach them if you're not with them? And that's what Jesus was doing. He's basically saying, I came here. I'm different. I'm not one of them. I'm not one of you. I'm not one of them. But I'm here to reach people. And we don't, as Christians, we don't need to be like the unchurched, like the non-believers. But we need to be among them. And we need to love them. And we need to treat them like we accept them. And, we need to pull them in and befriend them and, try to love them to Jesus. That's what we're meant to do. And it's hard to do that if we're sitting inside the church and not going out and reaching out to them. And when they come in the church, we're like, "What are you doing here?" That's not going to win anybody to Jesus. So we need to, if we have that attitude in our churches, we need to recognize that and we need to get rid of it. We need to fix it. But that's really not what we're about. And that's not what most churches and most Christians are about. I know that's what a lot of people expect, but that's just really not the truth. There are some, it happens, and it's unfortunate. But the majority is different. So point number 2, or the second misconception, is that being a Christian gives you free license to judge other people's choices. Now, we've already kind of started talking about this. But I'm going to reference Matthew chapter 7, verses 1 through 4. And we're going to go a little further than that, but verses 1 through 4 say, and this is Jesus talking, "Do not judge others, and you will not be judged. For you will be treated as you treat others. The standard you use in judging is the standard by which you will be judged. And why worry about a speck in your friend's eye when you have a log in your own? How can you think of saying to your friend, 'Let me help you get rid of that speck in your own eye,' when you can't see past the log in your own eye?" So let's unpack this a little bit. First of all, verses 1 and 2 say, "Don't judge others." Now, there is a very distinct difference between judging somebody and correcting somebody. I want you to understand that a lot of people, when you tell them, this is not right, and you need to change this, or this should be adjusted, or, whether they're Christians or not. A lot of people, when approached with that, are going to default to, I'm offended, don't judge me. That's not judging. Understand that that being given proper information and being directed in the right direction is not judgment. Judgment is, you're a filthy sinner and you're going to hell and I don't want to talk to you anymore. Or you're beyond hope. Or like I said, you walk into a church and somebody gives you that, what are you doing here look? That's judgment. But correction and saying, there's aspects of your life that are wrong and we need to correct that. That's not judgment. So we need to understand that right off. And if we're in need of correction, then we need to be able to accept it without defaulting to that don't judge me attitude. And if we are trying to correct someone else, then we need to do so in a loving manner. There's my cat, because he loves to be in the sermon as well. But we need to do so in a loving manner, because a lot of what separates correction from judgment is attitude. And so we need to be in the right attitude. But what we also need to understand is what's in verses 3 and 4. None of us are perfect. But if I'm out there living this kind of life and doing this kind of stuff and just not caring who sees it or what's going on, and, if I've got wrong, blatant wrong that I'm not concerned with, and then I'm trying to correct somebody else and tell them you're wrong and you need to do right, really? Because where did I see you the other day? What did I see you doing? It's hypocritical. That's what a hypocrite really is. I'm going to live the wrong way, but then I'm going to tell you need to live the right way. That's not, that doesn't jive. And you're not going to win anybody that way, because that's what they see. They're like, why should I listen to you? You don't have it. You're not even trying. And if you've got a log in your own eye and you're trying to get a speck out of your friend's eye, odds are you're going to hurt them because you can't see clearly enough to properly correct the problem. So what's going to happen is you're going to skew them off in a different direction, and not only are they going to be living wrong, but then they're going to be living wrong and angry at the church and not come back. So they're going to be living wrong with less opportunity to get corrected. So understand, that's what those 4 verses are saying. And sometimes it goes to an even greater extreme, where people think that being a Christian means that you get to or have to hate other people for how they live and what they do. And unfortunately that does happen. Again, it's not as widespread as people think, but it does happen. And that's why people think that, is because it's been seen. We have to be very careful not to come at people from a stance of, you're a sinner and you're going to hell. Is it scripturally sound? Yes, it is. But that's not going to help anybody. That's not going to get anybody's attention, because that's not the love that we were told to show to people. And on the other hand, those who are not part of the family right now, if someone comes to you as a Christian and says, let me show you, just come in and see, just take that just consider how it's coming at you. Okay? Slow down and don't just immediately jump to, you think you're better than me, or you're telling me I'm going to hell, or you're calling me worthless, or, don't jump to those things. If somebody's coming at you the wrong way, then, yeah, unfortunately it's going to throw walls up. But don't throw walls up without that. Be mindful of how they're coming to you, and just realize that somebody might actually be coming at you from a place of love and caring. They may express it poorly, but they may be coming at you from caring to try and get you to what they know. I'm not even expressing it well right now. But Matthew 7 and 5, the next verse, Jesus continues and he says, "Hypocrite, Now he's talking to those people who have the log in their eye and are trying to tell people about the speck in theirs. He's talking to the Pharisees. He's talking to the religious. And that's a word that I don't like, and we're going to get into that later. I don't like the current definition of the word religion. And like I said, we'll talk about it later, but this is part of where that started. The Pharisees, the Sadducees, the religious elite that were treating people poorly and wrong, they were the religious, and they were always trying to correct other people while they're doing the wrong thing themselves, and everybody knew it. Sorry, I got to catch up to my notes because I talk faster than I read. But I want to go back, and like I already said, judgment and correction are two very different things. And it has a lot to do with attitude. Your help, your concern with a poor attitude becomes condemnation. And that's not going to help the recipient to want to accept what you're bringing to them. And as a recipient, your attitude can be to reject good advice because you feel offended. And let me explain. Throughout my life, when someone would come to me to try to help me with something, more often than not, and I honestly offhand can't think of a time when this wasn't true, more often than not, when I got offended at somebody trying to help me, it's because they were dead on. They were right on the thing that I needed to change and that I needed help with. And that offended me because not only do I know I'm wrong, but you know I'm wrong. And now I've got to kind of defend myself here. So you got to get past that. You've got to be willing to say, I don't like it. It's uncomfortable. I'm mad, but you're right. And maybe there is something that I need to do different. But really, both sides have to want to grow in order for the relationship to have a chance. So let's move on. The third one. And this is one that I grew up seeing and believing, and it is that Christians can't have fun. Now, I don't remember it in my own home. Matter of fact, I have a lot of memories that really refute that in my own home growing up. There was a lot of fun that we had and things that we did. But I remember there were some people in the church I grew up in that I'm pretty sure if they smiled, their face would break. You know, it just seemed like I am righteous, I am holy, I am one of the redeemed, and this is my life. And I didn't want any part of that. Who does? You know? And you know, a lot of times that's just the person, and you don't know what their story is, and I didn't know what their story was, and there may have been a lot of stress and a lot of things that just were overwhelming to them. I don't know, but we need, as Christians, to recognize this is what people think about us, mostly because what the world sees as a good time, we don't. You know, I used to, when I was living that life, man, I lived my life in a bar. I lived my life driving fast and being stupid and, you know, drinking and, you know, putting things in my body to feel a certain way. And all these things were the things I did for fun. You know, it was just, it was, that's what fun was to me. And the Christian side of the world didn't live that way, and so it just seemed like there's no fun there, which is so not true. I just didn't recognize the fun that they were having, and really, I would have traded that fun for this one even then if I knew, if I had known the difference. But to say that Christians can't have fun, it's just, that's not what we're about. Matter of fact, the good feeling and the euphoria and the release is so much a part of our lives. That's what we get in our worship services and when we, you know, worship at home and things like that. But to go to Scripture, I'm actually going to go back to the Old Testament. 2 Samuel chapter 6 and verse 14. Now, David does not by definition, qualify as Christian. He's Jewish. He was Hebrew. And but he was a worshiper. And in this verse it says, "And David danced before the Lord with all his might, wearing a priestly garment." So, first of all, he dropped his kingly garments. He got rid of that. That wasn't important. That who he was as a person and as an authority in the world was not important. He got rid of that. He became like the others. He put on a priestly garment, and it was just him on level with the others in front of God, and he gave everything. And it says he danced before the Lord with all his might. Now, this is a worshipful fun that we're talking about, but this shows that we're even allowed to have fun in the very presence of God. It's not just that we can leave church and we can have a good time or whatever, but it's that we're made to have fun. That's part of God's nature, and that's why as humans we enjoy it, because it's part of the nature we were built with. It's just that we have to recognize where it comes from and how it comes about, and the world shuns that or doesn't see that, doesn't understand that, because it doesn't come from the places where their fun comes from. Now, there's a lot of overlap. I mean, you can go miniature golfing and go bowling and go to a movie and things like that. I'm not saying that all fun is, exclusive to worldly or not. I'm just saying that there's a lot of division, thinking that these things are okay and that the Christians aren't allowed to do that. And through tradition, there's been a lot of things that were omitted from a Christian life that weren't necessarily needed. I know I've got members of my family that still will not go to the movie theater. And there are certain movies I won't go see at a movie theater for sure. But I don't see the act of going to the movie theater and sitting and watching a film is wrong. I mean, and I don't think that that's a really widespread ideal anymore either, because there's a lot of Christian movies that end up in the movie theater. But I'm chasing rabbits there. The point is that even back before Jesus came and the gospel was complete and we had all the information stuff, we still see that worship was abandoned. It was fun, and that God's people were allowed to have fun and were encouraged to, and that's because of David. And God said, David is a man after my own heart. So there again, that shows that when David had fun and he was a man after God's own heart, it further solidifies that we are built in God's image. And part of God's image is joy. I mean, that's what we're all about, is love and joy. And joy is synonymous with fun. Even when times are hard for Christians, we know joy that the world doesn't understand. That's just part of our DNA. So number four is, once I give my life to Christ, I will no longer sin. Now I want you to just think about that for a second. The idea is, and the belief is, that once I give my life to Christ, I will no longer sin, and that it's a trap. It's a trap that a lot of people get suckered into, I believe, because a person will come to church or whatever setting. It doesn't have to be in a church, but a person will come to a point that they say, yes, I want to give my life to Jesus. And they do that, and they say the prayer, and they are sincere about it, and it's done. It's a done deal. I've asked Jesus into my heart, and I'm going to allow him to lead, and that's who I want to be from now on. And they do that, just for example, say on a Sunday morning. And Sunday goes pretty good. And, they're riding that high and they feel good, and there's just a weight that's lifted when you do that. And if it's not, then stay there until it's lifted, because it really is. It's true that just the weight of life becomes less. But then what happens is a lot of people will go back to work Monday morning after saying the prayer on Sunday and sincerely having a breakthrough on Sunday. They go back to work Monday morning and something goes wrong, and they drop an F-bomb, or they do something wrong. They fail. And then immediately somebody's there, or in their head, or somewhere or another, they'll get that impression, well, I guess it wasn't real. I guess it didn't really happen because I just sinned. I just failed. I just screwed up. And it's just, the understanding needs to be that, and what we need to do as a church is we need to embrace those people who come down on Sunday morning, on Wednesday night, or if we're talking to them one-on-one and we lead them to Jesus, we need to embrace them and say, listen, life's not going to be perfect. You're not going to stop screwing up. It's going to happen. It is a learning curve, and for some it's faster than others, and some people have just this immediate, overnight transformation that is just purely miraculous and nobody can understand or explain. But not everybody has that happen. It's a learning process, and you are now an infant in Christianity, and it's going to take time for you to develop, and we're never going to be perfect. We're never going to get all the way there until we're in heaven, or until after this life. So we need to explain that better, so that people don't mess up on Monday and just, well, forget it, it's over. You're going to have those moments anyway. There's going to be frustrating times anyway, where even when you know that you're not going to be perfect, you're still going to have those throw my hands up and, I just can't do it anymore moments. So we need to be better at explaining that. There's also, under this subheading, there's this whole idea. And I may make some people in some other denominations upset with this or something, but the idea is once saved, always saved. Like, I can say the prayer, I can give my life to Jesus, and then that's it. That's the only time I got to do it. Well, for a lot of people, that is the only time you got to do it. Because you do it, you start living the life. For me, not the case. Not the case, because I was playing so many times when I did it. And, as a kid growing up in the church, I'd be at the altar on Sunday, and sometimes I was really serious about it, and I'd be good for a couple of weeks, and then I'd just start, letting other influences get to me and things like that. But the point is that it's not a one-time thing and you're done and you don't have to do anything else about it. That's the once saved, always saved mentality that I want to attack, because that is about this far from abusing grace. Grace is there for those who want it and who want to do different and be different, who want to be a member of the family of God. And when you want to be that, there's a change that takes place in you. You become different. And if you go back to who you were and you basically say, you know what, I'm done and I'm going to live how I want to. I'm saved. Once saved, always saved. I can live however I want. No, I just don't believe that's the case. I believe there has to be a change in you. Jesus said so many times you have to repent and become mine. And that's true. And this is where people will start throwing up arguments. Well, you're talking about works, and you don't have to have works to be saved, because if a man's saved by his works, then he can boast. No, I am talking about works, but I'm not talking about works for salvation. What I'm talking about is straight out of James chapter 2, verse 17. So you see, faith by itself isn't enough. Unless it produces good deeds, it is dead and useless. What he's saying here is not that you have to do good things to earn your way into heaven. What he's basically saying here is there's two kinds of faith. There is, I say I have faith, and that's the only way you know, because I tell you. And then there is, I have faith, and because of that faith, good things come from me. Works are not a means of earning a way to heaven. Works are a byproduct of the faith we have in Jesus Christ. If you are one of His, then the good works are going to happen in your life. Just because they're going to. Not because you try to make them happen, or because you're going out and intentionally trying to do these good things, which you should intentionally try to do good things, just for the people around you, to show them who you belong to. But if your faith is real, it will produce on its own the works that James is talking about. And if you have no works, if there's no fruit in your life from that faith, then you need to think about where your faith really is, and if it's true faith. Because if you have faith and it changes nothing in you, then you have an idea, not faith. And there's a difference. Pardon me. The other thing under the, once I give my life to Christ heading, is the myth that pastors are perfect. Sorry guys, I'm calling you out. I'm going to let everybody know our little secret, and that is, we're people, just like you. We wake up, we put our pants on one leg at a time, just like you do. Well, I know a couple of them who hold them out and jump into them because they're superstars. But really, honestly, the only thing that separates us from our congregants is our calling. That's it. It is our heart for people, our need to teach and to grow people, and our innate need to help. That's really what a pastor is a servant to his or her congregation. And the reason we're pastors is not for the money, like the world thinks. A lot of people think, oh, he's a pastor, he's got to get paid to preach. Well, it's nice. If that happens, that's great. I'm not going to turn down a paycheck because, that's, I'm human. If I'm doing something and you want to pay me for it, I'm going to accept it. If I'm doing nothing and you want to pay me for it, go ahead, send the check. I'm cool with it. But that's not why we pastor. We pastor because we need to protect. We need to teach. We need to grow our congregation. It's just, we do it out of love, not because there's money, because look around you. Go look around your town at the pastors there, and they might be doing all right, but they sure ain't the ones with the biggest houses or the newest cars, or, there's exceptions to that rule. There are those that do make pretty good money. There are some who make really good money, and I would love to have that. But on average, we're not in it for a paycheck. We're in it for you. We're in it for souls, because we have to, because we just have such a desire to help and bring people along. But we also fail. We are still human, and we have our mistakes and things that happen. Even Paul, who wrote 2/3 of the New Testament and was probably the most prolific apostle in the early church. Even he said in Philippians 3:12, I don't mean to say that I have already achieved these things, or that I have already reached perfection, but that I press on to possess that perfection for which Jesus Christ first possessed me. What he's saying here is, look guys, I'm not perfect. I'm not going to tell you I'm perfect. I'm flawed as well. But I'm going to keep trying to be perfect. I'm going to do everything I can to be perfect. When I do fail, I'm going to recognize that, and I'm going to try not to fail in the same way again. And I'm going to keep pushing forward and doing better and better and better, because that's what I'm called to do. And one day I will attain that perfection, but not in this life. Nobody in this life is going to get there. We may get close, and you may know some people who you think are there, and that's awesome. Emulate them. But just understand that you're going to have mistakes. You're going to mess up from time to time, and it's okay. Just bounce back. Just don't let yourself stay there. Number 5. And let's see how many points I got. I've got 9 points. We're on number 5, so I may start having to go a little faster. Number 5, myth number 5 is that you are not impacted by the bad side of life, such as disease, death, financial issues, etc. People have this misconception that if they are Christians, nothing bad will happen to them. And if something bad does happen to them, then it's because they're not really Christians and they've just been fooling themselves, or whatever the case. Or that if they see another Christian that's having problems, that person's faith ain't strong enough. It's bad theology. It's really bad theology. Matthew 5:45 says, "For he gives his sunlight to both the evil and the good, and he sends rain on the just and the unjust alike." We all experience life. There's ups, there's downs, there's good days, there's bad days, there's struggles, there's stress, but we all go through it. There's no way to escape it if we're living life. And it doesn't mean that God's out to get you, or that God's removed his protection from you, or any of that stuff. It just means that's life. That's what happens. We live in a broken world. It's going to affect us because we have a physical presence in a broken world. And that physical presence is going to be affected by the things around it. Another point down there is there are people out there who will tell you, and there's people that are both Christian and not, and they will perpetuate this idea that if you're sick and you don't get healing, it's because you don't have enough faith. Or if you're sick and you go to a doctor, it's because you don't have enough faith. Now, there's entire denominations that just do not go to doctors. They just won't. It's God's going to heal me. And if that works for you and God does heal you every time you have a sniffle, awesome. That's great. Love to hear it. And I would love to be able to tell everybody, it doesn't matter what your ailment is, what your terminal disease is, or whatever, you're going to be healed from it. In a manner of speaking, you will. That healing doesn't always look like we want it to. There have been people I've known in the past that their healing came through the death of this body and their reward going to heaven. That is the ultimate healing. Once we get there, we don't have to worry about sickness anymore. And that healing is going to be available to every Christian. Absolutely. But as long as we're breathing and as long as we're in this frail and imperfect body, sickness is going to happen. It's just a given, and if it wasn't, then we wouldn't have access to the things that we do as Christians, let me put it this way. Okay. Luke was a doctor. It tells us that in Colossians 4:14. The same Luke who wrote the Gospel of Luke, who's credited with writing Acts, pretty prolific writer in the New Testament, and his profession was a physician. Why would God use a physician to deliver the gospel? It just, that right there kind of closes that gap. We need doctors. We're going to have ailments. We're going to experience things like that. That's why there are Christian physicians. It can happen. And then we get the idea, and it may or may not be true, but we at least get an idea that, at least in a moment, in the time of Jesus' earthly ministry, he was homeless. Now, he may have had a home, but he wasn't there. And we see in Matthew 8:20, he tells somebody, he says, the Son of Man has no place to lay his head. He talks about animals having places. Birds have nests and things like that. But he says, I have no place to lay my head. Why would you want to follow me? Now he's getting at a different point there, but the point I'm getting at is even Jesus didn't have everything. There wasn't this whole prosperity is money ideal. And then of course Paul in 2 Corinthians 12:7 talks about a thorn in his flesh. Now, some people think that is a physical ailment that he had that God didn't heal. Some people think that is attacks that he was suffering from people being influenced by Satan and people bringing him bad reports. Either way, Paul had issues that caused him anguish that God did not take away from him, even though he asked over and over. Now, Paul has got to be a mountain of faith. He's got to be somebody that we look at as a hero in faith. And Jesus, of course, Jesus is Jesus. And he still had to go through problems. Even before the crucifixion that he had to go through, he still went through problems just walking this earth. We have to expect that we're going to see some too. Probably more than he did. But then there's also this stigma of mental health issues. A lot of people can get to a point where they're like, okay, well, health issues happen, but then you present them with somebody who's got mental health issues, and some people's countenance just changes. All right, I won't drink any more coffee because it's gone. But a lot of people consider mental health issues to be spiritual weakness, particularly when it comes to like depression and just people who just look crazy, talk to themselves and things like that. Anything really that's off from what the norm is, people tend to look at that and think, well, there's just something wrong with them, and maybe they just need more Jesus. We all need more Jesus, don't get me wrong. But when it comes to mental health issues, I want to look at something here, and I want people to understand that mental health issues, it's not just because you're spiritually weak that happens. As a matter of fact, it's not usually because you're spiritually weak that happens. There's a lot of physical issues that happen with that. There's chemical imbalances. Sometimes there is an actual physical problem in your body that causes your mind to do unusual things. Extreme stress and trauma. A veteran with PTSD, you wouldn't tell them, I would hope you wouldn't tell them, oh, you just need more faith. Now, faith can help them with their PTSD, but you have to understand there is a real thing that happened to them that caused this. I mean, war and violence and even not just the veterans, but divorce and abuse and things like that. Things that people are not meant to go through. We weren't built for that. And that takes a toll, not just physically, but mentally as well. These things you have to consider. It's not just you need to pray more. There's actual things that you've got to take care of, and that's why there's doctors for that as well. Now, I'm not saying that you can't have a miracle healing for that. That can happen, and that's awesome. But we have to stop thinking that, well, I wear glasses, but you shouldn't take those antidepressants. That's just ridiculous. There's also a matter of conflicting programming. That can cause some mental distress. And when I say conflicting programming, the biggest example I can give is this. You've got a new transformed life in Christ, but you've got a human nature that for however long you fed, and this is how you programmed yourself to think. This is how your mind worked. And now all of a sudden you've got this transformation that's going on. You're trying to make this life work while this life is saying, no, I want back in. And you've got conflict and you're trying to reconcile the two, or more importantly, you're trying to kill this life and accept this one, but you got conflicting information that comes in, and especially with those who have abused chemicals, alcohol, drugs, things like that. You now have physical addictions fighting against this transformed life, and so that can cause some mental issues as well. And that's definitely, I mean, these all are, but that's definitely one of those places where we need to be able to embrace somebody and pray with them and say, look, God wants you to be good and He wants you to be better, but there's also other avenues of help too, and encourage them to go see that, and not treat them like they're, some weird outside whatever. Now, there's one other cause of mental health issues that I want to talk about, and this one is something that somebody just needs a miracle. And some of you may look at me like I'm crazy. I don't care. There is such a thing as demon possession. It is real. It happens. And I don't think it's, necessarily widespread. I can't say I've ever seen it that I am aware of. But it happens. And I know people who have seen it. I know people who have been in close proximity to that. And, whether you accept it or not, a lot of people just, he's just crazy. Well, that crazy might be something going on inside his spirit that's twisted around. He may have somebody else in there with him. I don't think it looks like The Exorcist. I don't think that, the typical possession, that's just for lack of a better term, is going to have heads spinning and pea soup. I think our enemy is more subtle than that. But there are people who get just so steeped in certain things you just can't get them away from, and sometimes that may be possession. Maybe I have witnessed it and I just haven't recognized. But it exists, and that is a time when somebody needs a miracle. But they're at battle inside themselves. And it's not necessarily because they don't have faith. It's just because they haven't been able to defeat that on their own. And, they may need us to bring our faith to the party as well, and to help them and to pray them through that. Regardless, just because you give your life to Christ doesn't mean that your life is going to stop being real. The reality that we live in, there's sickness, there's problems, there's money issues, and life is hard, and it's going to stay hard. And sometimes it's going to get even harder. But what we have to look forward to is the joy of Christ that we get to partake in, even when life is hard. Number 6, I did not speed up, like I said. Number 6, the myth is you can't believe in God and science. There's more than one kind of science, first of all. There's more than just two kinds, but I'm just going to bring this forward because these are the prevailing things. There is scientific law. Scientific law is patterns and processes that can be replicated predictably. We see this in medicine. We see this in things like gravity. Gravity, it's a law. I can do it over and over, and it's going to have the same effect. Sorry, that was very loud. That wasn't planned. But these are things that we can observe, that we can repeat. Medicine, we can create chemical compounds that combat specific things, and we can do that on a repeatable basis. And then there is scientific theory. Scientific theory are hypotheses that cannot be replicated, but they're accepted as true based on supporting evidence. Like Einstein's theory of relativity. That's a widely accepted theory, but it cannot be replicated. So it's not a scientific law because we can't treat it the same ways as we do laws. We can't replicate it. We can't observe it, and it's not predictable. It's just the evidence says this, and this points toward this direction. This is a feasible end to where this evidence is leading. Same with evolution. Evolution is scientific theory. Now, over time, people have gotten together and said we have these pieces of evidence, and when we look at these pieces of evidence, we believe that this is a plausible explanation for what they're saying. Here's the problem with scientific theory, and that is that we're humans, and all humans have biases. All of us. No matter how hard we try to cover them up or hide them, or how effectively we hide them, somewhere inside all of us there's biases. This is why people believe that science and faith have to be separate, because certain possible explanations have become omitted from many viewpoints because of religious and anti-religious bias. Going back to evolution, you are not allowed by law to teach creation in science classes anymore. Is it because the evidence doesn't support it? No, it's not. It's absolutely not. It's because influences have worked toward getting it banned. That's what it comes down to. Famous, influential people have corrupted the scientific process to exclude information that should hold equal merit. Basically, a bunch of famous scientists in the case of evolution, and this is not the only case that it's happened in, but in the case of evolution, a lot of famous, well-known scientists have gotten together and said, this is the explanation and that cannot be, and they have been convincing enough that the general public has decided, okay, you're right. But when you really dig into evolution and the evidence there that has been collected, you can see that it doesn't say that evolution is not possible, but it does not point any stronger toward evolution than it does toward creation. The difference is that there are people out there who don't want creation to be true for whatever their reason. And their biases and their position have given them an opportunity to take creation out of the equation, not because it's scientifically unfounded, but because they have started practicing bad science. No good scientist will ever omit a possible answer until it has been deemed impossible, until it has been proven that it cannot be the answer. Any scientist who says, this is possible and that's possible, but I'm throwing that one away because I don't like it, that's not good science. And I'm going to get hate mail on that one. Number 7, unanswered prayers means that there's no God or that he doesn't care for me. First of all, there's no such thing as an unanswered prayer. A lot of times the answer is no, and we don't want to accept that. A lot of times the answer is wait, not yet. Yes, I understand what you need, and I'm going to give it to you, but it's not time. But in 2 Corinthians 12, 8 through 9, and I'm going back to where Paul is talking, 3 different times I begged the Lord to take it away. Each time he said, my grace is all you need. My power works best in weakness. This is Paul talking about the thorn in his flesh. Again, don't know if it was physical or if it was situational, but 3 times Paul asked God, I don't want this anymore. Take this away and relieve me of it. And 3 times God told him, no, I'm not going to take this away. I'll take care of you. My grace is enough, and you will be okay. But I'm not going to get rid of it. Another problem with the unanswered prayers is that not all of our prayers are God's responsibility to take care of. As a matter of fact, a lot of times no comes because we're asking for the wrong things. Part of that is this prosperity doctrine that we hear about. Prosperity doctrine is not necessarily wrong. It's just that the word prosperity has been misdefined in a lot of teaching and for a lot of ministers. What people think prosperity means is money, possessions, comfort, things, ease of life, things that make life go better. And there's a lot of people out there who will preach, if you believe, then, if your faith is strong enough, you'll have things and you'll have money. And that's not what prosperity means. The actual definition of prosperity is the condition of being successful or thriving. Now, would you consider Jesus to be successful? Because he didn't have bags of gold. He didn't have beasts of burden. He didn't have a horse or a donkey to ride on. He borrowed one at one point, but it never says that he had anything. He didn't have a boat. The boats that he rode on belonged to other people, belonged to Peter, belonged to, were borrowed or rented or something. He didn't own things. His ministry did not reflect wealth or comfort in any way. First of all, he said, I don't have a place to lay my head. He had to rely on people being good enough to open their homes to him. He walked everywhere, which was a lot more common back then. But, like I said, he didn't have a chariot. He didn't have a wagon. He didn't have an animal to ride on. He walked wherever he went. It's just, he was persecuted everywhere he went. He had people coming against him everywhere he went. Jesus is literally the benchmark that we have to model our lives by, and yet he did not have prosperity by the definition that today's world has it. He wasn't rich. He wasn't comfortable. He wasn't wealthy. He really didn't even have the most close friends. Now, by today's standards, 12 close is pretty good. 12 that you hang out with every day is almost unheard of. But as far as prosperity gospel goes, Jesus did not emulate that. And so there's no reason that we should expect money and physical comfort to be our measuring stick of how faithful we are, how good a Christian we are. Number 8, the myth is that Christianity is a way of life, like being a vegan or a gym rat. Christianity is a way of life, but becoming a Christian is a change of life. It's so much deeper than adopting a new discipline, or I'm gonna go on this diet and I'm gonna lose some weight, or I'm just gonna start eating better and I'm gonna live a healthier life. That's a discipline, and it's a good thing. There's nothing wrong with that. But becoming a Christian it's a transformation. There are some aspects that are immediate, some aspects that take time and you have to grow into. But when you truly and completely surrender your life to Jesus Christ, you are not the person you were before. It's not a decision that you've got to stay with. You just are different. And all you got to do is live in that different. I had a complete change when I gave my life to Christ. The things that I loved and that I wanted, that I needed and craved, just weren't there anymore. That's not because I decided to get rid of them. It's because they just changed. It is not a way of life. It is a change of life. The second part of that is people believe that Christians are judging when we won't do the things that they are comfortable with. I talked about it when I was talking about Christians having fun earlier. I was annoyed at people when I knew somebody who became a Christian and I wasn't there yet, and all of a sudden they wouldn't go to the same hangouts that we went to. They wouldn't go be at the bar with me. They wouldn't go do the same things that same person had done with me before. And I felt like all of a sudden they were judging me, that they were saying, I'm better than you, or oh, I can't do that, and I'm holier than thou, and stuff like that. And I just thought, what? But you think you're somebody special now all of a sudden, and I didn't understand it, and a lot of people won't. People won't understand when you suddenly won't go where you used to go. But then I experienced it, and I found out that what really happened was not that these people didn't care about me. And it's not that they thought they were better than me, or that they were shunning me because I can't hang out with you anymore because I'm a Christian now. what happened was they truly did not belong in the places that they were before. And I found this out because I was, every Friday and Saturday night, I was at the bar every week. And then all of a sudden, when I gave my life to Christ, there were several weeks that I just didn't feel like going to the bar. I didn't realize what was happening, but I didn't feel like going. And then after a while, I realized I just don't want to go anymore. The desire's just not there anymore. And then a little while down the road, a buddy of mine was having a going away party. He was leaving town. And he's like, dude, I know you're not going to the bar anymore, but we're meeting up at this certain place. And I just really want you to come. It would mean a lot to me if you came and hung out for a little while before I leave town. So I'm like, all right, dude. You know, I mean, this is not my life anymore, but this is a friend. So I'm going to go. And I did. And I went to the bar and I hung out. And I really enjoyed being with my friend, but I was just so uncomfortable the whole time I was there. This place that, pardon me, this place that was a home to me for so long, and all of a sudden just walking through the door just made me feel wrong. It just, I mean, I felt like people were looking at me like, what are you doing here? Like the way that people feel walking into a church when they're a non-believer. That's how I felt walking into this bar. So really it's not that people are judging you because they won't hang out in the same places they used to or in the places that you are. It's just that that's not where they belong. And they are a different person and they just can't. It's just, there's just so much no about it. And I really don't know any other way to explain it. And then the last thing under number 8 is the myth that Christianity is a religion. Now, while there is really no category to socially explain Christianity outside the category of religion, because, you know, when you explain the organization or the business style, or you explain it on social media, you set up your page, or you do legal documents, etc., that it's lumped under religion just like all the other ones, just like Buddhism and Islam and all that. It's all, you know, when you put it on paper, that's how we define it as a religion. But Merriam-Webster defines religion as a personal set or institutionalized system of religious attitudes, beliefs, and practices. Sorry about that. Forgot that thing was even on. But it's off now. Let me start over. Religion by Merriam-Webster app. A personal set or institutionalized system of religious attitudes, beliefs, and practices. This is accurate, but it's a very sterile definition. Because what this is suggesting is a stringent, practiced, like almost like if you were practicing an instrument and you get good at it, you know. But that's not what Christianity is. Christianity, it goes so much deeper. It is a personal relationship with God that creates as a byproduct the devotion and conformation to scriptural living. It's like a healthy marriage. You would not live with your husband or wife and refuse to do the things that they like. Even sometimes the things you don't necessarily like. You wouldn't just flat refuse to do those things because you love them. And it's not the things that you're doing that are important. It's the joy of doing for them. I will oftentimes rub my wife's feet at night. She's had a hard day. She stands on her feet all day at work. And I can't say that I particularly enjoy having feet in my hands. But I love her. And I want to make her feel good. And I am willing to do something that is not my favorite thing just so that I can give her comfort. It's a relationship. She does things for me that she doesn't want to do. And, you know, she oftentimes comes home from work and goes into the kitchen and starts cooking. I know she's tired. I know she doesn't want to do that, but she does it. And it's just, that's what a relationship is. It's having these attitudes and these what is it? These beliefs and practices, not because we have to, and because we're trying to, again, please God enough to let us into heaven. It's just because we love Him, and it's a whole new world, and we just want to do good for Him because He's done good for us, and it's a whole give and take situation. Hebrews 10:16 says, "This is the new covenant I will make with my people on that day, says the Lord. I will put my laws in their hearts, and I will write them on their minds." Christianity is not about trying to keep laws and conditions and things like that. Christianity is just becoming a person who the rules of God become what we need to do. It becomes what we want to do. It just becomes our life. It's not because we're trying to do it or it's this hard thing. It's just what we become. That becomes what we want to do. And in that relationship, it's second nature to us. It's just, all of a sudden I feel like I just want to respect people more. I want to love people more. I want to treat people better, and I want to put God first. I want that relationship to be the strongest one I have, because it makes my other relationships better. That just becomes who we are. So again, it's not about a religion. It's about a whole different way, a whole different life, a whole new life. That's why we call it born again, because it's not we're changing the life we have. It's just new. It's just different, more than we could do on our own. And then the last one, I'm done. I'm done. But the last one is the myth that being a Christian is hard. Or on the other side, that being a Christian is easy. And being a Christian is not hard because of what I just explained. It's not about memorizing the laws and understanding them and working hard to keep them. Once you really truly have that transformation, the laws become a part of you. The changes become a part of you, and it just becomes who you are. But the flip side of that coin is you do not have to lose your individuality. If that were the case, the churches I grew up in and the pastors I knew growing up and stuff like that, they don't look like me. This is not the cookie cutter image that I grew up with of people behind the pulpit. But God didn't want another them when He called me. He wanted me. We grow up and we have our own personal experiences, and we are who we are. Now that changes and evolves once we have that relationship, but we are still us. We don't have to give up our individuality to become a Christian. But it's not easy either. We are going to face challenges. We are going to face problems. We are going to be targeted by people who don't like who we've become. And a big myth is that you can no longer associate with non-Christians once you become a Christian. That's not true. However, there will be those in your life who walk away, who just won't have anything to do with you anymore. It's going to happen. It's unfortunate, and you're not going to be able to reach them. But that doesn't mean that you have to put them away. We are meant to live in the world, not to be part of it, but to live in it and to reach people who are in it. Jesus ate with sinners. He went places and he did things that the religious elite of his time did not accept, and they hated him for it. But that's what we're meant to do. We're meant to go where the sinners are and reach them and talk to them and show them a hope that they're not getting where they're at. And not all of them are going to accept it. And even those close to us, may walk away. And it's not fun, and it's not something any of us want. But some people just aren't going to hear it. Some people aren't going to hear it now, but they're going to hear it later. Some people close to us may walk away and then hear it from somebody else and accept it. Who cares if they hear it? If they finally get there, who cares? But it's it's not black and white. It's not Christianity is hard. It's not Christianity is easy. It's just Christianity is life. It's life, and it's just like everybody else's life. We got to live it, and we got to go through the ups and downs. It's just that we have a hope that other people don't understand. And that hope is available to everybody. Jesus came for everybody. He came and hung on the cross, and he thought about you while he was on that cross. And if you were the only one he could save, he'd have done it anyway. Ladies and gentlemen, I've talked way longer than I intended to, but I hope that this has meant something to you. I hope that if you are guilty of some of these things, that you will recognize and start to look at doing different. I've been guilty of pretty much all of it. You know, it's things that I've had to work on. But if it's part of your life and you need to get rid of it, I hope you'll recognize it and that you'll put it away. If you're a non-believer and some of these things have been the things keeping you from coming to church and from coming and seeking Jesus, then I hope that you'll see that it truly is, even though these things happen, it truly is the exception and not the rule. And that whatever town you're in, whatever state your life is in, there's a church. And they want to reach out to you, and they want to love on you, and they want to help you to find the hope that they have. And I encourage you to go and find them. And right now I'm just going to pray, and I'm going to stop rambling on endlessly. So in closing, for the 17th time or whatever it is, Father, I ask you to help these words to resonate with some people. If it's something that they need to change in their life, then I ask you to help them with that change and to help them to accept it. If it is someone who needs to accept you, then I ask you to draw them to you and to just show them comfort and peace and bring them closer and let them know that it's available for all time. Just please be with us all as we go on and help us to be a light and a beacon to you. And I thank you for it. In Jesus' name, amen. And if you are one of those people that needs to accept Jesus, right where you're at, right now, it doesn't have to be in a church and it doesn't have to be some special prayer. All you got to do is go to him. Just say, hey, I need you. I want you, and my life is yours. That's all it takes. And if you do, I encourage you, if you've gotten anything out of this message, and especially if you have made a decision to accept Jesus, I encourage you to please message me and let me know. I need encouragement just like everybody else. So you guys have a great one, and thanks for hanging in with me for an hour and 13 plus minutes. Y'all have a great one.